Hi everybody, my name is Mandy. I am a makeup artist and this is my lovely model Erin. She is also a makeup artist and she does hair. She has graciously volunteered to model for me today because I want to show you guys a look that I really like from a makeup artist that I follow, that I really respect. The look is very minimal, it's very clean, and part of this video today is to try to show you guys how to edit your work, how to pull back, how to step away from putting too much on the skin, how to make the skin look like skin, how to just give your model or your client a very polished, finished look. And I'm going to be kind of recreating one of these looks that Nina Park has done. It's very minimal, it's very pretty, and I think it's gonna look great on Erin. So let's get started. Okay, so Erin's skin is already prepped. She used her own moisturizer and serum, which I think is good. Her skin feels good. It feels nice and hydrated. But if you were starting on a client, you would want to make sure that the skin is prepped very well beforehand. So let's get started. Since Erin has already prepped her skin, I'm starting with her brows. So I am using the e.l.f. Brow Lift here just with a mascara wand or a spoolie. And I'm brushing up her brows and kind of brushing them over. And one of the tricks I like to do with brows is to kind of press them in place after I'm done brushing them up. It just helps kind of smooth down all of the hairs and smooths the product into it. Next, I'm going in with the e.l.f. Halo Glow. This is color number 1. I probably could have used color number 0 on her because I feel like this was just slightly golden, but it works. And I'm using kind of a smaller brush. And you'll notice that I just really work product into the skin. I use tiny, tiny amounts of product and I just really make sure that everything is blended really well into the skin. Here I'm moving on to the MAC Pro Longwear Concealer as a prep for the eye. This is in color NW20. It's just a very neutral, kind of fair color that I end up using a lot on clients as a eyeshadow base instead of like a primer. So here I'm just packing that on with a fluffy brush. The brush is from Hakuhodo. And then I'm digging into some Viseart eyeshadows. These eyeshadows I have depotted from various Viseart palettes, and I'm just using kind of a neutral beigey pink tone here and just working that all over the lid with a fluffy brush. And now I've switched brushes to kind of a smaller blending brush that has a tiny bit of just a little bit of a deeper color on it. And that's just to give some definition to the outside edge of the eye. And then I'm using a little bit of a lighter color just on the lid itself, just to kind of soften up. I didn't want that lid to be too dark. And all of these colors are matte colors. So you'll notice I'm using just barely anything on the brush. I don't want there to be like a thick pack down of color. Next, I'm going to be kind of halfway tight lining, halfway lining. I don't want this look to be a really eyeliner heavy look, even though there is, visible liner in the source image. But I am using a brush that is a flat liner brush. It's not an angled liner brush, it's a flat liner brush. And I am kind of wiggling the Danessa Myricks Color Fix back and forth into the lash line. Instead of really swiping it across like you would with a angled brush, I am putting the product on the end of the brush and then kind of wiggling it back and forth and pressing. So you're not really swiping, you're more pressing with this type of brush and this type of technique. So I've got her liner kind of on the top a little bit, and I really want to get in between the lashes here. So this is where I really start to tight line. And I wanted to show this whole process so you guys can see just how small these little brush strokes are. So you're pressing, wiggling, just to get it into the lashes and not, it doesn't spread all over the eye. It doesn't get into the eye. It doesn't get into the waterline. It's just right in the lashes. And that is going to make the lashes look really dark at the base. This is a really good tip if you have light eyelashes and you see the gap when you put mascara on. That gap being like the light color of your lashes against your skin. So here I am tight lining the other side. And I started from underneath on this side just because it was a little easier now that I knew what I was kind of doing. Sometimes these makeup looks I'm doing, I am just still kind of winging it. So here I am putting on more liner on this side and just really working it in without doing any swiping motions. I want that lash to be really dark at the base. Now I have grabbed here a 266 brush from MAC. That is my angle liner brush. I have a million of these. And I'm working in more of the Danessa Myricks Color Fix, thickening, just barely thickening that outer lash line and creating a little bit of a wing here. I don't want this to be a real wing heavy liner look, but the look does have a baby wing, so we're doing a baby wing. And you can flip your brush around back and forth depending on where you're at on the eye. I like to have the outer point pointing toward the outside of the eye if I'm on that side, and then have the point pointing towards the inner part of the eye if I'm on the inside like I am here. You have better control with the brush if you are using that point effectively here. So bringing that point out again a little bit more on this wing on this side. So just tightening that up a bit. So here we have a baby wing. I'm really anal when it comes to the wings, so I like to get them nice and sharp, so I'm just completing that look here on this side. There's her baby wing. The next step after this, I think I cleaned it up a little bit with some, with a Q-tip. Now I go on to mascara. This is just the tubing mascara. It's a cheap one from Essence, applied with a spoolie. If I see anybody applying mascara straight from the tube onto somebody's eyes, I will jump off a bridge. And I see it all too often. It's just bacteria city if you're doing that, folks. So you want to be clean. Sorry for yawning. It's 9:21 p.m. I have been dealing with editing this video for the better part of 6 hours. And now I'm doing my voiceover and it's bedtime. So really getting in, my approach to doing lashes is to kind of pop the lid up with my thumb, and then I get way into the bottom there because I don't want any gaps. I don't want to be able to see the base of the lash. I want that to look dark. My pet peeve is when people just barely touch the freaking end of your lash with mascara. Oh, see, here's where I take off smooth out some of that edge with a really tiny Q-tip. These tiny Q-tips are great. I get them on Amazon. I have a million of them. They work really well for cleaning up small detail areas, like liner. Cleaning up the underneath side of the liner as well here. Feeling up her face, making sure everything is good. Adding in a little bit of nude liner on the lash line or on the waterline. Cleaning up the edges of that because some of that stuff gets onto the lashes a little bit. The thing with doing a look like this is you really need to take the steps and look at every single little detail. So I did her brows in the beginning, let that wax gel stuff kind of set. And now I'm filling her brows, and you'll notice I'm not carving out a brow. I'm not putting a pomade in there. I'm using just some Viseart brow colors on a brush that was not an angled brush, and now I've switched over to an angled brush just to give a little bit more definition. But I didn't start with an angled brush. I started with kind of a softer eyeshadow brush to put in the color, and then went in with the angled brush. So now I'm going to be moving on to cleaning up. I'm actually adding a little bit of shadow to the lower lashes. And I'm really not even putting that on the skin. I'm just kind of putting it into the lashes because there still was a little bit of that waterline color that was trying to hang out on the lashes, and I wanted to get rid of that. Next is blush. This is a Nude Sticks blush in color, I think it's called Salty Siren. And I'm applying that with a blush brush. And I'm just working that up into the skin. Blush is also another one that can kind of trick people a little bit. So this look overall is just slightly warm. And this blush is kind of more of a corally blush, kind of a warm corally blush, which applied really lightly looks really nice on her skin tone. Next, I'm going in with Face Atelier Ultra Foundation in color 1.5 Linen. And I am also using just a concealer brush here. This is the Real Techniques concealer brush. I'm not applying a ton of this foundation. I am applying it kind of very judiciously, just sort of where she needs it, where there's a little bit of redness. The interesting thing about these cameras is that sometimes the color shifts on the camera, and it doesn't look like that necessarily in real life. So I'm seeing a little bit here of this foundation looking a little warm on her skin, like almost a little bit yellow. And it didn't really look like that in person. So I don't use very much of it, so it doesn't really end up looking bad per se in the end, but it just was a little bit warmer than I like, but that was only when I watched it back on camera. So that is one thing that you guys have to really try to watch for, is knowing how your stuff photographs and how it looks on camera. And this is a new camera for me, so I am still getting used to it. And we are, working as we go along. So the next time I do a look on somebody, I will check it back in the camera and adjust accordingly. So if I wanted to fix the foundation here, I would have probably added a little bit of a pink or violet corrector, just to probably the violet corrector, because it would get a little bit of the blue in there and a little bit of the pink, and I need both. So that's what I probably would have done. Here I am applying a cream bronzer. And this look isn't really bronzy at all. It's just to give a little bit of shape to the face. I don't want this bronzer to look like it's been applied. I just want it to look like it's melting into the skin. That's why I'm using a cream bronzer. This is a really cheap one I got off Amazon. The brand is called She Glam. And I think the color is toffee or caramel. It's one of those. It's the lighter one, whichever one is lighter. So I'm taking the brush that I apply it with. I do this a lot with pretty much anything I put on the face. I'll use one brush to apply it and then another brush with nothing on it, and I use that brush to blend everything out. So here I am applying some of the cream foundation out of the Makeup Forever HD Essentials palette and sort of blending that around. This one had a little bit of a kind of cooler toned concealer in there, so that's what I'm going over it with, and it does soften out that, I think it softens out that Face Atelier a little bit. And I'm just kind of going over some of the areas on her face that needed a little more coverage. Not that she really needs any coverage at all. And then this is some blush out of that palette. So it's got cream blush and it has cream concealer or bronzer colors, foundation colors in it. And they are very nice. They apply very sheer. And I really like it a lot. So here I am taking one of the brushes that I used on the face earlier to blend out the edges of that. So now we're moving on to lip. I am using Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil, and I believe this is Endless Cacao. It's the very taupey, kind of very taupey beige tone. It's a really good neutral on people with cooler skin tones. So I'm putting that on, and then I am kind of buffing the edges out a little bit. The look that Nina Park does, she does this really cool blended out, kind of contoured lip line that you can get with lip liner, but I honestly prefer it with a little bit of contour or shadow. I'm getting in here with the lipstick color. I want this to be that kind of like warm berry tone. And I'm applying a little bit of it full strength here on the top and bottom, but then you'll see I am going to mix in some clear gloss because I want to sheer that down a bit. We use a Donessa Myricks clear gloss, and I'm mixing that onto the back of my hand with a little bit of that lipstick that I had already used. And then this gives me like a very sheer, very pretty, glossy, but not overly glossy wet look, but kind of more of a glossy, balmy look. And this brush is not technically a lip brush. It's probably an eyeshadow brush. But, you know, you just grab what you need. You don't have to necessarily use the brushes for what they're intended. You can use them however you want. So I am just filling her lip in. I want this lip to look very warm, berry, kind of, I wouldn't even know what type of color you would call that. If you know what color you would call that, let me know in the comments. And then here I'm blending out the edges of that. I would say doing lip is probably, well, I think everybody thinks eye is the hardest thing to do on somebody, but I would argue that it's lip. So here I'm going in with those same colors that I even used on her brow to contour her lip. And I'm using a shadow because it's a lot easier to blend. Whereas sometimes if you use a pencil, say you use a brown pencil or something and you try to blend the edges, it can be a little too waxy. Same with using a dark lipstick or whatever. Just get in there with a shadow. Put the shadow down. It'll give you a nice little contour. So I'm at the same time blending out the edges of the lip and adding some of that contour. So it should just have this really nice blended effect. Very cute. Next, I'm going to just powder her. This is this is Kryolan Dermacolor loose powder. My favorite loose powder at the moment. It doesn't put any color on the skin. And at the same time, it has like the most kind of luminous but also matte finish to it. So it's really pretty. I need to look and see what the actual ingredients are. And it doesn't flash back. It's really pretty. And I just applied that with a really small brush, sort of spot powdering, I guess. And this is the completed look. And she loved it. But I'm not done. I'm going to also add a little bit here. And I'll get into that in a moment. Okay, so this is the completed look for that Nina Park really beautiful, clean, minimal makeup look. It's just a tiny baby winged liner, very little on the eyes, brows just brushed up and clean, skin that looks like skin, like glowy underbase, cream blush, cream bronzer, very minimal powdering, very minimal foundation, and just really want there to be no visible lines of blending or anything like that on the face. So everything should just look like it melts together. And then the last step I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit to this look. So we're going to add a little bit of lashes, and I'm going to add just a little bit more on the eye. So just a couple of steps to bump this look up to be a really pretty holiday look. So let's get started. The only thing I'm really changing on this look is adding a little bit more to the eye. So whereas this is a very simple look, you can give it some more drama by adding kind of a sparkly shadow here. I got the Charlotte Tilbury Holiday face kit here. Two of those colors are pretty sparkly. I'm using the kind of bronzy one, and I'm just packing that against her lash line with a pencil brush. I'm using a paper towel underneath the eye to catch fallout because there's nothing worse than little tiny specks of glitter all over the face after you try to do a pretty glittery eye look. So that's one side. This is just kind of a minimalist take on holiday makeup. It should be really easy and achievable and still catches the light. It still looks really pretty. It looks very classy. And it doesn't take a lot of time. I'm just adding this with a pencil brush and packing that on the lid, and you can see just how subtle, how pretty that is. The other thing I'm doing, because I want to darken up that line, is I'm just going back in with a black pencil. You could technically do the liquid liner again or a gel liner or whatever you've used, but this is just easy. The funny thing is after I do the lashes, I go back in with the Danessa Myricks gel liner again anyway, but that was more to cover the lash line so you can't see the glue line. So these are the lashes. I get them on Amazon. They're kind of a wispy style. They're not a really heavy lash. You could kind of do anything you want here lashes wise. So here's me just kind of starting to put them on, and then after I put them on, I'm fixing the edges down, making sure they are all lined up properly, and this is the finished look. So very classy look, not a overly done, super dramatic makeup look here. So we've just got this really pretty glowy skin. The lip is really pretty. Here I am going over the line. So I'm using the Danessa Myricks Color Fix Mattes in black to hide that lash line. Just because sometimes you can kind of see where you've applied the lashes, and that's another one of my pet peeves. I don't like to see where I've applied the lashes. I want that lash line to be hidden. I don't want there to be any obvious sign that I have added fake lashes. So covering that line with a little bit more black liner just gives me the look here. And this is really the completed look. I had fun doing this, and Erin is a great model. She's very cute. She's photographs well, so this was a lot of fun. And she loved it, and she was texting me later telling me that she still had it on. Okay, so this is a finished look with the little bit of glittery shadow kind of smoked along the lash line. And I've added some lashes and a little bit more of that Danessa Myricks black liner. So very understated holiday look. You have a little bit of sparkle in there, a little bit of lash, but the rest of that look can just kind of stay nice and clean. You don't have to have a lot of color on the lip, but you can. If you wanted to pair this with like a berry toned lip or a red or something like that, it totally would go. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe because I'm on YouTube now and I have to say that in my videos. So thank you. Bye.